Hello and welcome back to Building Momentum, the show where we peel back the curtain on the exciting and often chaotic world of building a successful SaaS. I'm Yash, your host for this show, where every episode we bring you the stories and strategies of founders who've been in the trenches, conquering churn, scaling their teams, and building products that people and businesses need. In this episode, we'll be chatting with Lynn from WeShop.ai. WeShop is an AI platform that helps you 10x your model and product photos. We're excited to hear their story and the lessons that they've learned along the way. We'll be dissecting their wins, the losses, and everything in between. So buckle up, grab your headphones, and get ready to dive in the world of SaaS. Hey Lynn, thank you for joining us for this episode. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you, Yash, and thank you for the invitation today.
Absolutely. So let's start with this. Let's start with talking about the big problem that WeShop is trying to solve for today. What is the challenge, and who faces this challenge that you're trying to address?
Yeah. So essentially, we know there are like millions, if not more, e-commerce merchants, fashion, clothing retailers out there, and they all need images for their digital store or their offline stores. In the past, it has been a struggle for smaller, medium merchants to be able to find the perfect model, the perfect studio or location for such shootings, especially for fashion and clothing. And we have been in the e-commerce industry for decades now, our team, and we knew it was a struggle over the past, decades or ever since e-commerce has been booming. But it was just something that you had to deal with as e-commerce merchants or small business owners. And now with generative AI, this struggle or this, actual pain point was actually being able to solve using the new technology. So that's why, since the new technology arrived end of 2022, that's when we started to think like, oh, maybe this is something that we can actually implement and use with our know-how, obviously, and to solve these issues for millions of small, medium merchants out there. And then it actually got expanded into larger retailers or brands like Shein is using this because they have thousands of listings on a daily basis that they wouldn't be able to, do everything manually or just hire models manually. So this, I think it's very much a top ask for from all of the merchants out there.
Yeah, I would agree to this, and the reason why is because I have a friend who runs a jewelry e-commerce platform, and so those are sort of in India we're big on jewelry and accessories and things like that. And this is the biggest challenge, right? So updating he has physical outlets as well, and then he also has online presence. This is the biggest challenge for him to make sure that each and every product and each and every SKU has good photos to go along with that, and the impact that they have on conversion rates is significantly high, right? If you're able to present the product that's being used in some way, shape, or form. So I think this is a big challenge. And where are you today, right? In terms of solving this problem, if you can give us some understanding on the status quo as things stand at WeShop, where are we today?
Yeah, so we launched last year, end of May. So we, our team is currently globally remote. So we are a remote first company, and we have teams in Hong Kong, mainland China, and the US as well. And ever since we launched last year in May, we now have over 350,000 merchants using us globally, predominantly in North America, as well as Southeast Asia and North Asia as well. We do have some users from Europe. I would say that's like ranked maybe like fourth or fifth on just our country ranking, but majority of our merchants or users are small, medium owners from Shopify, Etsy, Lazada, Shopee, who really are basically have a small team and are trying to have like an AI tool that can help them solve, the first step into creating model and product photos.
This is amazing, right? So 350,000 merchants in about one and a quarter years. About a year. So that's like close to about 800 merchants a day, which is amazing, right? So which is really cool. And this is great, right? It's lovely, and so here's what that brings me to as well, right? In the age of AI, no idea is unique, right? And so because I can, like, AI also tells me ideas and problem statements and things like that, and it's getting easier and easier to build solutions and build products. And in that space, or in that age, how do you sort of make sure that there's not some competition somewhere out there in the world who's doing a little bit of a better job at the product than you? Like, how do you think about competition, right? Because it's like technology is no more an advantage. So, like, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly. And we got asked that questions like a lot of times, I think, from the beginning of our journey. And I would kind of dissect it into twofold. The first is how the macro environment, or how the large language models progress will impact us, right? Because we build on all sorts of open source models, and that has its pros for us, but also it might impact us negatively. If, one day OpenAI came out with something that just kill all of us small entrepreneurs out there. So from our perspective, is from the macro point of view, how do you prevent a mega, or a giant company from kind of intruding your area of expertise? And how we did this is because of our know-how in fashion clothing industry. So really, more to the fashion arena, that is the area that we decided to go even deeper and more niche. So that's why 70% of our users are from the fashion and clothing brands. And that translates to how we work on our products and how we strategize our product roadmap as well, is that we focuses on the AI models phases, and how that would be developed into more a natural appearance, very natural generated result, instead of like the very uncanny artificial images you might see from Midjourney. Although Midjourney is obviously great and fantastic, but this is from Midjourney. This is not like a real person. Although she looks perfect and everything, and that is something that we are working really deep into, making something that looks natural, that you, to be honest, you probably hopefully wouldn't be able to tell that, oh, this is AI generated in the future. And then we also work on areas where we work with actual real model agencies. So we work with a US model agency and a Germany model agency in an attempt that we can train the digital avatar or the digital representations of their models, so that we're not trying to kill a model industry, but more so we're trying to merge both roles together, so that the traditional models, they were able to find their foothold in the new AI role, and that really hopefully would eradicate some of the ethical considerations as well. So that's one area on how we try to compact a more macro view. And in addition to that, obviously there are like hundreds of smaller competitors out there. They kind of died down in the last 6 months, I think, for two reasons. One is because GPU costs are still difficult, and the fundraising market isn't that optimistic. So it kind of died down. We can be at a self-sustained age, but also because a lot of the images that they generated are, for example, Midjourney wrapper. So it just looks uncanny and unreal. And you wouldn't be able to get enough e-commerce merchants to accept that and to actually use those on their e-commerce stores or for their, offline usage. So that wouldn't translate to their top line and just kind of, make them go away. So to our perspective is also how we're able to stand out among like other Midjourney wrapper or companies who maybe focus on just changing backgrounds, and they focus on maybe background removal, like a photo room. That's where their strength is, and probably not ours. And ours is really still within the fashion AI model arena. So that's the battlefield that we try to go deeper and really build our name in that specific niche to serve.
Interesting. And so for all the people who are listening or watching us, and I would recommend, I think the first point that Lynn mentioned about the models at WeShop looking a little more realistic. All of us might have seen outputs that Midjourney produces. I'd also recommend just going to WeShop.ai and just scrolling down, right? And you'll see a host of photographs that have been generated using WeShop, and you'll see the difference, right? And it's difficult for anyone to say it out in words. It's just it's perfectly imperfect when you sort of start to see that, okay, this is a little more natural, and it's not as perfect as Midjourney gives, and that sort of makes it more natural as well. And so the other piece that I want to understand about WeShop, and this might be also interesting, is that most SaaS companies, when they start out, their first version of the product, it is okay for it to be quick and dirty, right? So it's okay for it to be sort of put together. In certain cases, we've seen even no-code tools for the first few customers, and it could be a little buggy, it could be a little off, and things like that. However, in case of WeShop, what my assumption is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that for you to close first 10 customers, the product already has to be really good, right? Like it is only then that they actually come on board, right? So your product finesse has to be as good as it should be for a traditional SaaS company at 100 customers for you to acquire your first customer. And so how did you think about that?
Yeah.
How did you go about thinking about it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it is also one of the struggle that I might mention in the later part as well. I think for us, when we started last year, around this time, in May, we're still getting early adopters. So they're perfectly fine, or if not more, better, less vulnerable to imperfect or hallucinated parts of AI. So they were able to accept some unstructured limbs, or unnecessary peripheral generated with AI, or just hallucinated parts back then. So when we actually our first version out last year, I would say that it's not as bad. Like, it's still commercially ready. I think that was the premise. However, it was a lot more unnatural than the version that we are seeing now. And the backgrounds was, also merged less well. And there are some other, imperfections that we were seeing last year this time. And I think the early adopters still took it well, just because, they first joined in, and also the user interface wasn't as friendly. Like the learning curve was even steeper than what we had.
Yeah.
So we were able to get, I want to say, like the first 10,000 are still more so AI enthusiastic, or like the really small folks who's like a one-man, two-man shop that they wouldn't be able to have any images before this, but now they have, they at least they have something. It would boost their sales by maybe 5 to 10, not like 10 times, but that's something that they were able to accept. However, when we get to, 350,000 now it's getting a little bit harder, because we're going deep into the traditional merchants, or larger corporations who have seniors be like, oh, this isn't perfect. This is not the same work as I would have if I were to hire an agency. So now we're going to that, area where we have to tread on that area. I think that's the difference now. But you're right that, I think that's a struggle we are seeing, in which now we are getting to an area where you were expecting a perfect result from all the AI tools, AI software you were seeing, as perfect as if we were to use Zoom or Calendly, but it's just realistic, not the same technology behind it.
Got it. And what a great problem to solve, right? Where a high-ranking decision maker in Chanel is comparing an AI-generated output with an agency, right? And so, and like that's already a high enough benchmark, and this makes me also wonder a little bit, where I know for a fact that from the time that you started to today, there would have been different points in time when you would have had to, like, typically you start a company as generalists, right? Where people are like 70% good at 5 different, and then over a period of time, as and when you scale, the types of challenges that you face are very, very different. from a product standpoint, as well as from a GTM, like a go-to-market standpoint. At what point did you think about making that transition? Were you thinking about internally growing? Were you thinking about recruiting specialists from outside to solve very specific challenges and problems? Like how has that journey been of scaling and solving challenges that 90% of the world wouldn't be solving essentially?
Yeah.
Like to be a little more clear, what I'm talking about is like the difference between starting probably a hospital as a group of general physicians, and then at some point a patient walks in needing a heart surgery. Right?
Yeah.
And so, like, how do you make that transition?
Yeah. I think so. Obviously, with a company, there are two kind of teams or departments. You can kind of generalize department-wise: a technical track and a non-technical track. I think for non-technical track, we haven't seen like a big gap or a big transition from kind of where we were last year this time or where we are now, just because I don't think that the go-to-market for AI companies are radically different from what Zoom, what Calendly were doing in the past. It's still the same. You're facing the same group of people. You're just trying to educate in a different way. For technical though, it's radically different because, like you said, when we first started up with the first 6 months, technology was literally something that's unseen. It's changed on a daily, if not hourly basis, right? So for us, we have maybe one of the best tech journalists group to be able to train themselves up to learn about the most advanced technology development out there. So to learn what Meta's open source is doing, how we're able to incorporate that, how we're able to incorporate stable diffusion, all the open source, all what we're seeing from other communities out there. So that's not that challenging to an extent where as long as you have a smart group of engineers, you're able to kind of do that. And as long as they're fast learners, right? It's not rocket science to begin with. But now we are getting to the, I don't want to say rocket science, but it's like semi-rocket science part for the unsolved issues out there. For example, imperfect hands, hallucination, and unwanted parts of the AI images. How are you going to solve that? Because obviously Midjourney didn't solve it. Stable diffusion hasn't. DALL-E hasn't. So the smartest people on this planet haven't solved it. So now you're I guess for us the transition has become, one is we could rely on the foundational model to advance, and then we kind of catch up with it and adapt quickly. That's one way to do it, obviously. I think that's an obvious way. We do take that route too. However, we are trying to find like workarounds or tricks where we probably invent along the way. I don't think like it's, you can like strategize it. It's just kind of like scaling low, but it'd be like, oh, you kind of found it. And it's the trick that, we own or we can own a pattern on. I think that's the second thing that we are now transitioning into. So that's why, the reason why we moved to remote globally as well is also we're trying to find those talents across the globe. It doesn't have to be like the machine learning engineers who has the stellar backgrounds from top university. It could just be someone who kind of understands the tricks or kind of delves into it on like a daily basis. And I think that's the area that we are moving into.
So like a couple of engineers that you have are also scientists. Like they are right at the frontier of trying to solve a problem that all of us know about but has not yet been completely fixed. And
exactly.
That's fascinating. And so talk to us a little about the, like, how did you think about go to market? What was your first few steps? What are a couple of channels that you tried? Some of them that worked, some of them that didn't. Like take us through a couple of experiments that you had as GTM for WeShop.
Yeah, I love to share with everyone because I think to get to the first 1,000 customers or users, probably the hardest, right? I know people go to like their friends and families and getting feedbacks and asking for everything. We kind of didn't like do that. I think for us, the interesting thing is when we first started out last year in May, that's when Threads, by Meta, it was just launched. And so I started my Threads account and I started to build in public actually. Not on Twitter, not on X or so to speak, because X was already like, full of very successful entrepreneurs. So it's hard for me to kind of start my new presence there and try to build in public and try with other, AI influencers. So that's why I was like, maybe that was the way to go. Let me just try it. And it actually did work. So I started to build in public on Threads, interacted with those also new Threads influencers. So they obviously had, X accounts and they were popular or predominant there as well. But they were also new on Threads. I mean, they're not, doing a lot better than my account was. And I started interacting with them and I got, unprecedented reactions where I just wouldn't be able to on X because I was nobody there. And that's how it kind of went viral. And then we had well, I wouldn't say like viral, but we get like, accounts that feature us and they got like 200,000 views and there's some comments and everything. And that's when the first inflow or the first flux came in. And then we got to, I want to say like 50,000 quite quickly just because everyone was looking at AI and people were trying out new AI products. Like I'm sure you were as well trying out, like I myself try everything. I don't necessarily pay for them, but I would sign up for, a lot of things and to see premium or free trial. And I think that's how we got to that number quite quickly. So I would say like for the first, early adopter journey, it's luck and hard work at the same time. Like you kind of have to find the right place for you to fit in. And I think for us, that was the right place and the right time. And then moving on to that though, unlike most SaaS companies, which I'm sure most people probably would, they launch on Product Hunt. I do think Product Hunt is a great platform. If if your product is like a Notion, right? You cater to SaaS founders or like business entrepreneurs. For us, because we cater to e-commerce merchants or fashion retailers, they don't really go on Product Hunt, to be honest. They go on like Shopify App Store or, other e-commerce platform to shop for their app or their necessities. So that's why we actually never done Product Hunt. Plus, it's a lot of work. So I think it is important to consider like where your users are and you go there instead of like, for example, when we did Threads, well, I knew AI enthusiasts were there or on X, and I chose the former just because it was easier to tackle, and we went there. And as we moved to kind of the second stage of our go-to-market, I knew like Shopify App Store is somewhere that we should be in. And then that's why we chose to get listed there as well. And now we are ranked number 2 among the image editor or the AI e-commerce image editor category. We've been, obviously move up. We were number 2 to begin with, so we're trying to move up using SEO and a lot of users reviews and everything. And I think the key is to go where your users are. I don't think Product Hunt is for anyone. It's really more a vanity metric than, just need to think about like where your users are.
Yeah. So I've launched on Product Hunt about 13 times, and I can very confidently say that if you want criticism, you can go to Product Hunt, but if you want users, you can go somewhere else. So I think Product Hunt is great if you're looking for feedback. Just from your peer group, right? They are not your customers, but from your peer group, if you want some feedback, that's probably helpful. But yeah, so customers are I mean, having the 13 launches, a couple of them for our own products. I think about 10 or 11 of them for our clients on behalf of our clients, when we're building their SaaS products. And so we see a bump and then it sort of goes away. Right? So interesting. So would you qualify these two things? I think you mentioned luck, and I want to qualify that a little further by saying that I wouldn't call it as luck as much as I would call it as headwinds in the market. So
I agree.
So because like everyone is talking about it, you want, like, the market is also looking for it, and So so it's always helpful, right? I'm
Yeah, it's
actually
about
not
the
sure whether
right
it is called
time
headwinds or
as well.
tailwinds, but yeah, whatever is helping you go forward. I'm forgetting the analogy.
Yeah, probably tailwinds.
Um,
Yeah.
is it tailwinds?
Yeah, I think it's
Okay, so
tailwinds.
then
So
market
tailwinds
tailwinds,
is
right? So
something that
things
can
that
go
pushing you
opposite,
forward.
right? Yeah, that pushing forwards. Yeah.
Ah, oh, got it. So then market tailwinds, right? So
Yeah.
got it. So now I remember this because I made this very public embarrassing mistake. So so market tailwinds, right? That push you forward. And then second would be like marketplaces, right? Where your users already exist. Would you be open to talking about a couple of mistakes, or not mistakes necessarily, but couple of experiments that didn't work
Yeah.
from a GTM side?
Yeah. So we did I think the first thing is we did meta marketing or like meta ads like most people would. You just run Instagram ads or Facebook ads without knowing why you're doing that, but you were like, oh, but everyone was doing that. And my manager
Yeah.
came along and be like, this and that. Your competitors are doing what CPM, what CPM. You're like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I think that was a mistake because so we didn't have a mobile version back then. We are developing our app and it's launching, very soon. So you guys can check it out afterwards. But we still don't yet have like a sophisticated mobile version just because like if you look at Midjourney, they don't either. It's just harder to play around with everything on your mobile and it requires a different skill set. But we still ran Instagram ads, which now in hindsight, I was like, why are we doing that? Because people only look at Instagram on their phone and they will be directed to a landing page where they are then asked to go on their browser to, enter the site and to start working on it. It's just such a long funnel that it wouldn't work and it was very hard to measure the actual ROI either. So for us, so we didn't spend a lot of money on it. It was more like a trial and error, and it proved to be more error than success. Obviously, I'm not discouraging running ads, obviously, but I think like as we were post product market fit already when we started to do paid marketing on a very small scale. But if you were a pre product market fit company, like you don't really have revenue sub, like $10,000. I wouldn't recommend running ads just because first of all, it could go really out of your game. Like it could go to the roof without controlling a budget. And the second is the users that you get is hard to gauge like the actual interest and everything. Like it wouldn't be measured as PMF. And I think the second thing is something that we haven't done. I think fortunately or not, we didn't do any SCM. So we do a lot of SEO, obviously. We focus on long tail keywords, our image SEO, as well as content SEO. But we haven't done any SCM. And the reason is also it's still harder to measure the ROI just because going, from the top funnel, from your AdWords to user coming to your site to registration to them paying. I think for our scale, it's just hard to justify the cost at this point, given that there's still a lot we could do with SEO. So I do think that's something that we haven't done. And I think like working on your SEO was better than just buying AdWords at this point. And we actually saw like competitors buying our brand name as like they just buy WeShop AI, right? They just like spend money on it. And we still rank number one regardless, just because Google is still quite fair, or I want to say like clean to that extent. So I think like SCM, you wouldn't be able to do that for like a decade.
Correct. Correct. So like couple of quick things there. So one is when a competitor buys your keyword, it's a proud moment, but it's also a terrifying feeling. Because you don't know how much money they have and you just don't know, right? So that's one. And I tell you what kills companies with meta ads. And in my very limited experience, one of the things that I've seen is that running meta ads, it doesn't fail completely. And so what happens is that it works just enough to give you hope. That hey, okay, next week will be better or next month will be better. Maybe I'm not investing this, or maybe I'm not doing that. And so, like, if it doesn't work, like, it gives zero results, it's a very easy decision, but it gives you some result where you think, okay, instead of thinking about whether this is meaningful or not, you start thinking about how can I optimize the result.
Yeah.
And I think that's what leads to a lot of wastage in terms of dollars and hours of effort as well. So thank you, Lynn, for the time. This brings us to the last part of the conversation. And I know we're going above our time, but I think this is helpful. Just a couple of minutes more. So first thing is I have a question for you that a previous guest who was David. David runs a company called DataBar, and DataBar basically offers you ability to pull in data from thousands of different applications that you can integrate into it, and then offers you a spreadsheet-like interface, and you can create charts, graphs, and so on and so forth. And one of the challenges that he's trying to solve for is the conflict between what are the things that he wants to build that he believes are good for the customer versus what the customer is asking for today, right? So so there are things that is as an entrepreneur, like you also must face, where you think that the customer is not asking for this because they don't know something like this is possible, right? So the customer is always asking for faster horses, but what if you want to build a car, right? And so how do you at WeShop sort of try and maintain the balance? How do you think about
it? That's a great question. For us, we do encounter similar things. So, for example, as I mentioned multiple times, that everyone knows that AI generated this form limbs or this form hands. It's not perfect, but they will always ask like, "Oh, is there something I can write to make it better?" Or is there like a tool that we can do that without knowing? From a technology point of view, you can fine tune something that was able to kind of sort of rectify that mistake or that issue, although it's not perfect yet. So I think for us, it was more so instead of asking what the users want, like I'm sure they want, what they want is a perfect hand, right? But they would ask a question, or they would phrase the question be like, what prompt I should be writing? Or are there any tools that you recommend, or you should build a tool that can help with that, this and that. But all they want are just perfect limbs, or it doesn't have to even show their hands. Like it's not like you need hands to showcase your dress, right? So there are tricks around it. For example, if you hold a fist, or if you just kind of hide your hand in pockets, you're able to generate something. And that's like the easiest way, instead of trying to write like thousands of prompts over it. So I think it's more so we never ask what the users want. It's more like, oh, what issues are you facing? Let us know what your images look like, the before and after. And we would go into it and to see what could change though, what could correct those issues at this point. But obviously there's still a lot of things that are just with our limited technology, we are unable to change all that at this point. But I think instead of asking like what do you want, it's like what issues are you facing?
Got it. Interesting. And what's your challenge? Like what is it that you are trying to solve for today at WeShop?
Yeah,
that I should ask my next guest about.
Yeah, like I think like hands are definitely something. And then I think for the next guest, if the next guest is also in the AI industry, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably are. That I think with AI, because I just read something today where cloud AI, so Anthropics, they just hit 1 million ARR. Well, the app only, right? That excludes their API and everything. But imagine like that's literally the number 2 AI company out there. Behind OpenAI, right? NVIDIA is in its own silo, so that's different. And their app has only hit 1 million ARR within months of launch. And that just basically says, well, first of all, people aren't necessarily paying for AI as long as you have some credits I can tolerate that, and I can kind of use the limited features out there. And the second thing, I think it's for example with us, we know the main issues of our paying rate or why people aren't paying is because it's not perfect. If it's as perfect as you have, this black shirt of Yash, and you just take a picture of that, and boom, there you go, and handsome Indian man, muscular, dressing that. I'm sure you would buy the software immediately, in a heartbeat. But that's just not how tag is operating right now. And we do hope that would, appear one day, although it might, disrupt our current landscape a lot. But because the current AI or what AI could do isn't really 100 times your efficiency or your productivity, or it's not something that you envision in your head on, what AI would look like. And that's why people try a couple times and they'd be like, oh, this is too difficult. Sit learning curve. I'm not paying for this. I might use it or I might revisit it in another time. I think the key issue for us is how do you kind of combat that with the current AI landscape is growing. It's now, I think, hitting a plateau over the past 3 months, unlike, a year ago. And you will probably see some companies' revenue hitting a plateau as well. So how do we kind of all face that? If do we need to wait for GPT-5 or something to appear? If not, then kind of how do you, as a bootstrap founder, tackle with that in the next, months, years to come?
That is a brilliant question, and I'm surprised. I'm not surprised. I just feel sad. Why haven't I thought about this question myself? Right. So that's a great question.
Able to answer that. Like that's literally like I don't know how.
No, this is good, and this is good, right? Because I love to see my guests sort of find it extremely difficult to answer. And what I found, like we've released about 8 episodes of the podcast. We recorded, I think, 20. And after 20 episodes, after recording 20 episodes, one of the things that I've realized is that the guest actually asks the more difficult question, because it's something that they are going through, right? And so this is helpful. But Lynn, thank you for taking out the time today and patiently being part of this conversation, and for all the people who joined us on Shopify or on YouTube or on Amazon Music. Thank you again for viewing or listening to this. If you go into the comments, you'll be able to find the link. But it's fairly simple. It's WeShop.ai, but you'll also be able to click on that link and hover and go to their website as well. If you own an e-commerce store or work at an e-commerce company, do give it a try. It's a platform that will genuinely 10x more efficiency, bring 10x more efficiency in your product photo shoots workflow, right? Thanks, Lynn, again.
Yeah, thank you, Yash.